Okay, let's just get right into it, because for so many international graduates and workers trying to navigate the Canadian system right now, the stakes are just incredibly high. We're talking about graduating, dealing with work permits that are ticking closer to expiration, and trying to somehow chart a clear, realistic path to permanent residency. And right in the middle of all this pressure, the TCF Canada test has really emerged as this massive tool. This brings us to the focus of today's explainer, TCF Canada, a French choice. The central thesis here is that this one single test offers you several completely different pathways, but, and this is a huge but, every single one of those pathways plays by completely separate rules.
Look at this quote, because this is the absolutely crucial point we need to establish right away. French may create a work permit option, but it never replaces the actual permit application itself. You see, a valid TCF Canada result is powerful evidence. It's kind of like a key that can unlock some major doors for you, but just holding that key in your hand doesn't automatically grant you legal status, it definitely doesn't magically extend a work permit, and it for sure does not guarantee permanent residence. We have to be incredibly pragmatic about how we're actually using these test scores.
So, to help us safely compartmentalize these distinctly different immigration chapters, here is our roadmap for today. 1. The TCF reality check. 2. Decoding NCLC score targets. 3. Work permit options. 4. Express entry and PR. 5. Real applicant scenarios. And finally, number 6. Preparing for the test.
All right, part 1. The TCF reality check. Understanding the limits and possibilities. Think of this explainer as your practical guide. We're dedicating this to separating genuine, actionable immigration opportunities from the very common and frankly dangerous misunderstandings that can seriously jeopardize your status in Canada. Moving on to Part 2, Decoding NCLC Score Targets, Translating Skills into Benchmarks. You know, a major part of avoiding those dangerous misunderstandings is knowing exactly what score you're aiming for in the first place. That means translating your French skills into the actual benchmarks that Canadian immigration uses to grade your application. And that official benchmark is the NCLC. Yes, I know it's yet another government acronym you've got to memorize, but it's important. It stands for Niveau de Compétence Linguistique Canadien. When you sit down and take the TCF Canada, it's measuring 4 distinct skills, right? Speaking, listening, reading, and writing. Well, immigration programs take those raw TCF scores you get and they translate them into this official NCLC scale. You really need to know this acronym because it's literally the exact metric every single Canadian immigration program uses to set their minimum thresholds. So, let's break down the 3 major planning levels you absolutely need to be aware of. Think of NCLC 5 as your access level. It's super vital for specific work permit situations and college-level PGWPs. Then you've got NCLC 7. This is the crucial threshold. Hitting NCLC 7 in all 4 skills is what's required for university-level PGWP language proof, the Express Entry French language category, and the federal CRS bonus. And finally, NCLC 9. Now, don't confuse this with a minimum requirement. NCLC 9 is really a strategic target. It gives you much stronger comprehensive ranking system potential by totally maximizing your core language and skill transferability points. And remember, guys, every skill has its own score. You can't just ace the reading section to magically make up for a low speaking score if a program requires a strict minimum across the board.
Which brings us to Section 3, Work Permit Options, Navigating PGWP and Francophone Mobility. Let's see how all this builds into temporary work permits, carefully separating the post-graduation route from the employer-specific Francophone mobility route. They both use French, for sure, but they are entirely different vehicles. So the new reality for international students is strict. For most post-graduation work permit applications filed on or after November 1, 2024, you have to include approved language test results. The targets are definitive here. If you are graduating from a university program, say a bachelor's or a master's, you generally need an NCLC 7 in all 4 French skills. But if you're graduating from a college, a polytechnic, or another non-university program, that target drops to an NCLC 5 in all 4 skills. TCF Canada is definitely an accepted test for this, but keep in mind your results must be less than 2 years old when you actually submit your application. And please remember, a PGWP is generally not renewable. Your TCF score is evidence for your first application, not some magic trick to renew one that's expiring.
Now, what if you're already a worker and you have an employer who really wants to keep you on? Well, that is exactly where Francophone mobility comes in. This is an employer-specific, LMI-exempt work permit. The language requirement here is totally different from the PGWP. You only need an NCLC 5 or higher and just in speaking and listening. But listen, the French score alone does nothing. The work has to be located outside Quebec, you absolutely must have a qualifying job offer, and, this is the kicker, your employer has to actively submit that offer through the employer portal using exemption code C16 and pay the compliance fee. Your TCF score satisfies the language portion, but your employer actually doing the paperwork is completely mandatory.
And this brings us to a massive warning label for anyone who is nearing the end of their current permit. A test result sitting in your email inbox does not preserve your status in Canada. I'll say it again, it does not preserve your status. To rely on maintained status and actually keep working legally, you have to submit the proper work permit application before your current permit expires, and you have to obey all applicable work conditions.
All right, Section 4, Express Entry and PR, maximizing your permanent residence profile. Now that we've locked down the temporary permit side of things, let's pivot to the permanent residence chapter. This is where we get to explore how French can drastically, and I mean drastically, improve an express entry profile, assuming you already meet the core eligibility, of course.
50 points! Literally, this number changes lives. Hitting NCLC 7 or higher in all 4 French skills can give you a massive point advantage. Look at how it breaks down. If your English is at CLB 4 or lower, or hey, if you don't even provide an English test at all, you still get 25 additional CRS points just for the French. But if you combine that NCLC 7 in French with a strong English score, meaning CLB 5 or higher in all 4 skills, that bonus doubles to 50 additional points. In the hyper-competitive express entry pool we're seeing today, 50 points is an absolute game changer. That can literally be the difference between waiting years in the pool and getting an invitation to apply in the very next round.
But wait, points are only half the story here. There's also category-based selection. Reaching NCLC 7 in all 4 French skills actually unlocks your eligibility for the French language category draws. However, this is exactly where people tend to trip up. Unlocking the category does not replace the basic rules of express entry. You still have to qualify for a base program first, like the Federal Skilled Worker, Canadian Experience Class, or Federal Skilled Trades Program. You got to create an accurate profile, keep those test results valid, and ultimately, you still have to rank high enough when an eligible round actually happens.
To put that ranking into some real perspective, take a look at this snapshot of official IRCC data through July 10, 2026. Look at the cutoff range for the French language proficiency category. It hovered between 393 and 420 across 7 rounds, issuing 35,500 invitations. Now compare that to the Canadian Experience Class cutoffs during that exact same period, which sat much, much higher, between 507 and 518. Now, I need you to hear this. It is absolutely vital you treat these numbers as historical context, not as future promises. We never say French draws are easier. No way. They simply had lower historical cutoffs during this specific period because they were selecting from a completely different eligible pool. Moving into Section 5, Real Applicant Scenarios. Diagnosing your unique pathway. With all those complex rules and numbers in mind, let's pivot to some real-world applications, because theoretical knowledge is great and all, but it's totally useless if you can't apply it to your own life.
So I want you to actively reflect right now. Which of these pathways actually resembles yours? Are you a student trying to secure that very first post-graduation work permit? Are you a current worker desperately trying to bridge a gap before your permit expires? Or are you sitting in the express entry pool fighting tooth and nail for those extra points? Diagnosing your exact situation dictates exactly what French score you need to target.
Let's walk through 4 realistic scenarios, just to make this crystal clear. Take scenario A, the new graduate from a university. They need an NCLC 7 in all 4 skills for their PGWP, while making sure they check every other PGWP condition. Now contrast that with scenario B, the expiring permanent worker who finds an employer outside Quebec. They only need an NCLC 5 in speaking and listening, but remember, the employer has to submit the portal offer for Francophone mobility. Then we have scenario C, the express entry candidate. They're grinding to hit NCLC 7 in all 4 skills to trigger those 50 bonus points and get that category eligibility. And finally, scenario D, the invited PR applicant. The TCF score helped them get the invitation, sure, but is not a bridging open work permit. They still need a complete PR application and an acknowledgement of receipt before they can even think about applying for a BOWP. So, 4 totally different people, 1 test, 4 completely different rulebooks.
And that brings us to Section 6, preparing for the test, achieving your required score. Because knowing your precise pathway and exactly which NLCC score you need, whether it's a 5,
a 7, or strategically pushing for that 9, that's the vital first step. But the very next step is doing the actual work to achieve that score.
And this is exactly where CL Language Academy comes into the picture. They specialize in helping learners figure out exactly where they stand right now through a proper, honest level assessment. Then, they build a structured study plan specifically tailored for the TCF Canada format. We're talking timed practice, targeted speaking drills, real writing correction, and exam strategy. And the best part? It's available online across Canada, or if you prefer in person, they're right in the Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge area.
Because honestly, going in blind? Yeah, definitely not an option when your immigration status is literally on the line. You have to know your exact target band, you have to actively build your French to meet that specific standard, and you have to prepare with a clear strategic plan. Every single point matters, guys. Missing a band requirement by just 1 point can literally mean missing your entire immigration pathway.
Finally, as always, please remember that immigration rules change constantly, and every individual case is uniquely complex. This explainer provides general information. It is not legal advice. You absolutely must verify current requirements on Canada.ca and consult an authorized professional for your specific situation. So, I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on today. Are you just casually studying French and hoping for the best? Or are you strategically targeting the exact numbers you need to secure your future in Canada?